Students are taking on more and more debt, and I don't see such a great return on investment. But they are choosing that path. There is certainly a way to manage these costs. In fact, I have an entire chapter in my book on this topic. But we have Rebecca Walser here today to dive into this topic with me. She's the president of Walser Wealth Management. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Great to see you today.
So listen, I know you're in favor of this debt forgiveness, so please convince me this is a good thing. What do you think?
Well, I'm not actually in favor of it. I'm in favor of everything being even, right? And I don't believe in necessarily government handouts. I definitely think that we should have social safety nets. So I don't have any problem with that. But I think what the problem is with this particular legislation, Dan, is that it is tied through the CARES Act to the emergency of coronavirus. So you're talking about in 2021, a policy being announced, and then in 2022, going through litigation, or even in 2022, that basically says, hey, if you're under a certain income level, the administration, the executive administration has decided to forgive your student loans up to a certain level. And that really, the power of the purse is with the Congress and not the executive branch. So that we have a first problem there as a lawyer. And then I would even see an equal protection problem, because if you're going to declare a pandemic related or emergency related funding, why wouldn't that apply equally to everyone? Why would you have an income litmus test on that? So I think we have some equal protection issues, even if the Supreme Court would get to the fact that this is related to an emergency under the CARES Act to coronavirus, which I think is a very, very difficult stretch for them to make.
So let's put the legality aside for a moment, and I understand that's definitely a big issue. Let's really talk about the fairness of this. So if you look at students who want to take on debt because of the education at a particular school, whatever, and they just take out all this debt, and then the government turns around and says, you don't have to pay it back. Now, they chose that as opposed to someone who, let's say, gets sick, like cancer, and then they have these medical costs piling up. That's not their fault. They can't pay it back. They get no forgiveness. So please, let's address fairness, if you would.
Well, that's exactly, I mean, not to bring up the legal arguments again, but that's the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment. That's exactly, Dan, for these kinds of things, so that the government can't write rules that benefit, although they do it. Obviously, we know we have lobbyists, we have all kinds of carve-outs. I'm not laughing at that problem, by the way. I'm just saying, I'm not naive here, sitting here saying everything should be fair and equitable in society. But certainly the laws that are being promulgated related to an emergency, if it's truly, see, he doesn't have the authority. A president of the United States does not have the authority to do this outside of something different that's happening. And that's what they're saying. Under the CARES Act, under this emergency, we have this authority. So if you're going to talking about an emergency, how are you treating people that are affected by an emergency differently? How is there a litmus test in there? It's not fair, Dan. And I would definitely say to those people that are considering, student loan debt, don't think, well, if I make under a certain level, I'm going to get this forgiven, so therefore I can afford it, and therefore I'm going to go. I mean, you have to make decisions that are based on your own pocketbook and not expecting the government of the United States, which is completely bankrupt, as we know, and the Federal Reserve is in negative cash flow right now. This is all something we should all know, all U.S. citizens should know, that the Federal Reserve is a negative cash flow situation as we speak, which is not sustainable. And here we are talking about forgiving student loans related to coronavirus when it's 2 years ago and we've pretty much moved on as a society. Obviously, it still impacts us. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just saying, is it really that we need to forgive student loans from coronavirus? And if so, then why doesn't that apply universally to everybody, not just a specific group? It does not make sense. And I think it's just dead on its face, in my opinion, legally.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, but let's just shift a little bit for a moment, Rebecca. So we understand the problem that we have. How do we go about solving this problem going forward? I've maintained the fact that it seems like it's like predatory lending out there, the way they throw money at these kids. But what do you think can be done going forward?
You know, you're 100% right, Dan. There is no true analysis of what is the value of each degree at each university. And I hate to say that we need some independent third party because those always get corrupted by lobbyist dollars. But we do need some kind of standardized value of a degree across universities, because what happens is they don't look at the value they're creating. They don't look if their degrees are actually worth it. And all they do is come up with additional ways for you to fund it if it goes up in price. Private loans, parents, Pell Grants, all kinds of federal subsidized college loans, and then this student loan forgiveness. So there's no accountability at the actual institutions for the value of their degrees if all of these third parties are going to keep bailing out these people that are taking on these loans. And of course, at the end of the day, if you don't want to continuously be in this situation, you have personal bankruptcy protections, which doesn't necessarily eradicate student loans, but get rid of all of your other debt so you could just pay your student loans. The whole system is absolutely in need of an overhaul. We must get to true value being delivered to our college graduates. Otherwise, these degrees that they're coming out with are not worth the paper they're written on.
Well, I agree with you. I always say it's all about 3 words: return on investment. But thank you so much, Rebecca.
ROI.
Very, very insightful
you,
and so helpful. So thank you. People ask Scott for investing advice.